The volcanic moon of Jark 7 breathed heat like a sleeping beast. Grayson adjusted the collar of his diplomatic uniform, sweat clinging to his back as he stepped beyond the obsidian gates of the Ralkara stronghold. Blackstone ridges framed the tribal village like jagged jaws, their edges glowing faintly with magma veins. The air stung of sulfur and scorched iron. He'd trained for environmental extremes, but Jark 7 didn't welcome visitors, it judged them. Hundreds of red-furred warriors stood watching from stone terraces carved into the cliffside. Their glowing yellow eyes tracked his every step. Grayson had faced tense negotiations before, even walked into a trade dispute with plasma rifles leveled at his head, but this felt different. No translation error or diplomatic blunder had prepared him for the weight of ancient silence, a drumbeat once deep and hollow. The elder matriarch stepped forward, her fur streaked with volcanic ash and her voice unshaken. "You come to speak of peace," she said, "but words weigh. Nothing unless burned in fire. Prove your intent. Step into the circle. Face our flame." Grayson's translator confirmed the phrase, though the warning needed no language. He was expected to fight, not with a weapon, not with help, but with his bare hands. Ritual combat a test of spirit, not victory. He couldn't back out. Refusal meant insult. Insult meant war dot, so he stripped off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and stepped into the glowing ring carved into the rock. The heat pressed in from all sides. Flame torches circled the arena, their light flickering across the sand and stone. The crowd hushed. Then she appeared. Emma stepped into the ring with the confidence of someone born to it. Her crimson fur glowed beneath tribal tattoos that curled along her arms and throat like molten flame. Her stance was still centered like the eye of a storm that hadn't yet begun. Yellow eyes met his, assessing, unblinking. She didn't bare her teeth or shout. A challenge. She didn't have to. Grayson exhaled and lowered into a ready stance. No aggression, just endurance. The drum struck again. The fight began. Emma moved like lightning, claws arcing high. Grayson ducked and rolled, the air hissing as her strike grazed past his head. Dust exploded around her feet as she shifted direction. Without pause. Another slash closer this time. Grayson wasn't trying to win. He was trying to survive long enough to show respect. His body moved on instinct, training, adrenaline. She pressed him hard, circling like a predator, but her strikes weren't wild. They were calculated, precise, and beautiful. Then he saw it an opening. He slipped under her arm, used his momentum to tap her back with a closed fist. Not a blow. Just a gesture. A ripple passed through the crowd. Emma spun on instinct, her posture shifting. She dropped low, fainted left. He anticipated it, but not what came next. Her foot slid. Her balance faltered for half a second, and in that moment of recovery, her mouth found his exposed wrist. Her fangs pierced skin. Grayson gasped as pain flared bright and hot. Not deep, but unmistakable. His blood touched the stone. He stumbled. Back, heart pounding. Emma stared at him in frozen shock, her claws curling inward, her jaw clenched. All sound around them vanished. Then the matriarch's voice echoed through the circle. "It is done. Mateblood has been chosen." "What?" Grayson demanded, clutching his wrist. That wasn't she didn't. Emma looked just as stunned. Her eyes flicked from his wrist to the elder, to the warriors now bowing their heads. All around them, the fire circle changed. Pelts were carried in. Cloths and oils were retrieved. A nesting ritual was beginning. "That bite," Emma said quietly, not looking at him. "In our law, that marks a bond. A life bond." Grayson's mind raced, words trying to form and falling short. "You bit me during a spar. That's not a marriage proposal." Emma looked at the fire, then at him. Her voice was barely a whisper. Here it is. The nesting circle smelled of ash, oil, and wild root blossoms. Grayson sat motionless on a pelt layered over warm stone, his wrist still wrapped in a strip of ceremonial cloth soft, woven by hand, soaked in something that made his skin tingle. The wound didn't hurt anymore, not really, but the weight of it did. Around him, Ralkara warriors worked in eerie, reverent silence. They arranged the circle with the focus of priests preparing an altar, not a battlefield. Emma sat 10 feet away, draped in a deep ochre shawl lined with curling flame designs. She hadn't spoken since the matriarch declared their bond. Her yellow eyes stared into the hearth fire, unreadable. Her tail twitched only once, betraying tension otherwise held perfectly still. Grayson wanted to speak to demand explanation, or laugh at the absurdity, or tell them all this was clearly a misunderstanding, but instinct held him back. Something in the air had shifted the moment her teeth met skin. It wasn't just the bite. It was the ritual, the silent recognition in every warrior's face. The way the crowd had bowed, not cheered. Not as if a fight had ended, but as if something sacred had begun. A warrior approached, towering and older, his fur streaked with soot and time. He carried a long sash dyed in ironroot ink. With a respectful tilt of his head, he placed it over Grayson's shoulders. "This marks your place," the warrior said, voice like low gravel. "You are seen now, Starburn. You carry her fire." "I didn't ask to," Grayson said, more tired than angry. "This is a mistake." The warrior didn't flinch. "The flame doesn't ask permission to burn." Across the circle, 2 clan sisters approached Emma and began adorning her with fresh bands and perfumed ash. She didn't resist. Didn't speak, but her eyes flicked once to Grayson and held. There was no fury there, no apology either. Just weight, consequences, duty. The drums resumed, low and steady, and the chanting began. Foreign words spoken in unison, vibrating through the earth like a heartbeat. The nesting circle had become a ceremonial locus. Emma and Grayson were at its center. He leaned slightly toward her, catching her eye. "This bond, your people take it seriously," he said. Her voice was low, strained. "It's sacred. Once sealed, it's eternal. I didn't agree to anything. I didn't mean to bite you. Then call it off. I can't." He stared at her. "You're a warrior. You fought off mercenaries and clawed through steel. You can't refuse a tradition?" Emma turned toward him, eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. "Refusal is dishonor, to me, to my clan, to the flame. And if you walk away now, it doesn't break the bond. It just breaks me." Silence. The kind that scrapes your ribs from the inside. "I'm not trying to shame you," Grayson said, quietly. "But I'm a human diplomat. I can't just marry someone by accident." Emma closed her eyes. "Then pretend. Just until it's safe. Until the clan no longer watches so closely." He didn't answer right away. Across the circle, clan children placed bowls of offerings, root wine, volcanic seeds, fire-polished stones, tokens of celebration, welcome, commitment. Not a single laugh echoed in the crowd. There were no cheers. This wasn't romantic to them. It was sacred. "I'll stay," Grayson said at last. "For now, I'll play the part." Emma looked at him then, really looked. And something in her gaze softened barely, but there. "I don't want a part," she murmured. "I want to fix what I broke." The fire crackled between them, casting flickering shadows along the walls. The night passed slowly, wrapped in ceremonial rites and whispered chants. They weren't left alone until hours later, when the tribe retreated to their dens, leaving only embers and silence. They sat inside the nesting tent, barely speaking. The walls were lined with sacred cloths, stitched symbols glowing faintly. From the heat, the ground was warm. Too warm. Grayson peeled off his jacket and sat cross-legged. Emma remained across from him, tail curled beside her legs, arms crossed. When she finally spoke, her voice had a raw edge. "You didn't see it. When I bit you, it wasn't planned. It was instinct." Grayson raised an eyebrow. "You instinctively bite your diplomatic sparring partners?" Emma's claws twitched. "The way you moved it triggered something. The dance of flame. Our ancestors taught that combat reveals the truth of soul. Sometimes that truth answers before the mind catches up. You're saying your soul decided I was your mate mid-spar?" "I'm saying I lost control. And control is all I've ever had." He stared at her a long moment. "You didn't lose control." She looked up. "You hesitated, right before the bite. I saw it. Your eyes shifted. You chose it, even if you didn't know why." She didn't argue. Outside, distant drums began again, softer this time, almost mournful. Grayson pulled the ceremonial cloth tighter over his shoulders. "So what now? You and I sit here, pretending we're bonded, until what peace talks? Finish, or some elder decides we've proven ourselves?" Emma shook her head. "Tomorrow we complete the affirmation. A blood vow. It seals the bond in the eyes of the ancestors." He stood slowly. "You want me to bleed again for a mistake?" She rose with him, her posture stiff. "No, I want you to understand what you mean to these people now. You're not an outsider anymore. You're one of us. And one of us doesn't walk away when it gets hard." A long silence passed. Grayson finally nodded. "All right, I'll stand for the ritual. But after that, we decide what this bond becomes. Not tradition, not fire, just us." Emma's eyes didn't glow. They shimmered like heat refracted through water. Deal. But neither of them slept that night, and as the fire dwindled to embers and the shadows grew long, Grayson knew the real trial wasn't the ritual ahead. It was everything that would follow after. Grayson awoke to the sound of stone cracking beneath boots and the distant clang of ceremonial spears striking together. Morning had barely clawed over the jagged horizon of Jark 7, but the camp was already alive with preparation. Warriors moved through the smoke-laced haze with urgency, ash-marked hands checking armor straps and javelin charge levels. The air buzzed not with celebration, but with unease. He sat up from the nesting circle, his back sore from the heat-treated stone mats, the iron-scented sweat still clinging to his skin. Across from him, Emma stood dressed in full ceremonial gear, volcanic red wrappings now laced with obsidian scales, her tattoos pulsing slowly with faint orange light. Her back was turned, tail low, stiff. "You're up," she said without looking. Grayson groaned as he stood. "Did I miss the wedding feast, or are we skipping straight to the blood oath and flaming spears?" Emma finally turned. Her gaze was hard, but not hostile, focused. "Scouts found something last night." "Something?" She nodded. "Metal-kinned. Drones. No flags. No cal sign. Near the Sacred Ridge." Grayson froze. The Sacred Ridge was off-limits declared sovereign, ground by every interplanetary treaty that had protected Ralkara lands after the old mining wars. Any breach wasn't just trespass. It was an act of war. "Let me guess," he said. "Your clan assumes it's human." Emma didn't answer. She didn't have to. They moved quickly through the outer trench trails, accompanied by 4 elite warriors, cloaked in fire-dyed leather, their weapons slung and ready. Grayson kept pace, his boots crunching over volcanic shale, his diplomatic gear stripped down to just his stealth harness and wrist-linked sensor kit. Emma led the way, crouched low, every movement measured. Her silence unnerved him more than the approaching conflict. The wind changed as they reached the ridge, a sharp metallic edge beneath the usual sulfur. Grayson tapped his visor, switching to spectral overlay. What he saw made his breath hitch. Below the ridge, hovering quietly in a wide arc, were 5 angular drones. Each one bristled with scanners and sensor spires, their surface matte and unmarked, no emblems, no affiliation tags, just silent sentinels carving invisible data trails into the earth. He crouched beside Emma. They're mapping something. Strip mining pattern? She asked. Maybe. Or excavation prep. Either way, it's illegal. He pulled out a folded transmitter from his side pouch and began scanning for signals. The drones weren't just autonomous. They were being remotely operated through a tight band relay hidden in orbit. Whoever's behind this isn't playing small, Grayson muttered. Oranos? Emma asked. Could be. They've been booted off this moon before, but this isn't their usual tech. It's cleaner, quieter. Emma's voice was a low growl. They walk sacred ground. And if we strike without evidence, Grayson said, your clan looks like the aggressors. My embassy gets pulled. Everything we've built? Gone. Emma stared down at the drones, her claws tapping slowly against obsidian. So what do you propose? We sit and watch while they desecrate the graves. Of our dead? No, Grayson said. We tag and trace. Disable. Don't destroy. Her eyes turned to him, narrow, intense. You want me to trust your human tech over my blade? I want you to trust me. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the thrum of the drone's dot. Then Emma nodded. 1 hour. Then I bury them in the ash. Grayson set to work, planting a low-emission interference beacon into a black stone outcropping. It hummed faintly to life, disrupting the drone pattern just enough to cause subtle drift in their formation. Emma watched him with skeptical fascination. The moment the nearest drone veered slightly off course, she motioned sharply. Her warriors moved like smoke. In under a minute, 3 drones were neutralized, netted with filament disruptors, or speared clean through their cores with charged javelins. Emma leapt from the ridge with terrifying precision, slamming her claws through the 4th unit and dragging it down in sparks and silence. The 5th drone tried to flee. Grayson activated a signal dampener, jamming its uplink. It twitched in midair, then collapsed in a heap of dying electronics. They crouched over the nearest wreck. Grayson plugged in a decryptor module and pulled data streamlined logs, terrain scans, signal relays. And names. He froze. Orano's extraction, all right, he said. But they're using shell companies now, subcontractors. This wasn't a rogue op. It's an organized return, a quiet one. Emma's hands balled into fists. They knew this land was sacred and came anyway. This isn't just resource theft, Grayson said. It's political. They want to provoke. Make your people look volatile so they can argue the treaties don't apply. Emma looked down at the twisted metal. They'll burn everything. Grayson stood, eyes sharp now. Not if we strike first, but smart. With this data, we can take them to the tribunal. Cut their funding. Kill them before they grow. Emma turned toward him. Legal fire doesn't sing to my people. He met her gaze. Without flinching. Then give them both. A trial for the stars and a reckoning for the land. She didn't respond immediately, but something in her posture shifted. Then we moved together, she said. Mateblood's fight as one. The moment hung in the air thick with new gravity, not ceremony. Not obligation. Choice. They descended the ridge as one, the wreckage of broken drones cooling behind them. The first sparks of a storm that neither of them could stop now, and as they reached the outer camp, with warriors gathering, drums echoing low in the distance, and elders stepping from their dens to receive news of encroachment and proof of trespass, Grayson understood something deeper than diplomacy or ritual. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was the beginning of war. Smoke curled from the ceremonial fire pit as the council gathered. Warriors stood at the edge of the circle in complete silence, hands resting on sheathed weapons, eyes locked on the center. Grayson stood beside Emma, no longer simply the outsider. The bite mark on his wrist had faded into a scar, but its meaning had only deepened. His presence now carried the weight of ceremony, of proof, of an undeniable bond witnessed by an entire clan. The decrypted drone data flickered in the air above the fire projected from a tribal holosigil rigged with salvaged human tech and Ralkara stonecraft. Coordinates, mining logs, relay routes, satellite links. It didn't need translation. The truth was universal. They returned, Grayson said, voice steady despite the tension. Orano's extraction, illegally, quietly, and they will return again, unless we stop them, now. A ripple of growls passed through the gathered warriors. Elders leaned closer. One, a wiry male with black-striped fur and molten amber eyes, bared his teeth. They mocked our laws. They violate our dead. Why do we not already burn their machines to ash? Emma stepped forward, her posture like a drawn blade. Because fire must be aimed. And because we are not alone in this anymore. She turned her eyes to Grayson not as a gesture, but as a challenge. You saw what he did, how he fought beside us, how he brought us proof when vengeance alone would have left us with only broken metal and no justice. Grayson's heartbeat pounded in his throat. Emma continued. The clans have been scattered for cycles, divided by bloodlines, grudges, territory. But this bond, she raised her hand, gesturing to the scar on his wrist, and the twin flame tattoo recently inked into her own. It wasn't just fate, it was a reminder that we survive together or we die separately. The council chamber went still. Then the matriarch rose. She walked slowly toward them, staff clicking against the stone floor, eyes glowing beneath the weight of centuries. Her voice cracked the silence like lava breaking surface. Then it is decided. Ralkara rises, but not alone. Her claw pointed at Grayson. You, Mateblood, speak with a human voice. The stars still listen to it. Will they listen now? Grayson exhaled slowly. Yes, if I speak with proof and strength, if we act with precision, I'll send the evidence, lock down their access. Orbital courts will freeze their funding, cut their support. And if they try to send reinforcements, his gaze sharpened, then we'll already be there, waiting. The drums started low. Not ceremonial this time, martial. The camp erupted into motion. Emma grabbed his arm as warriors scattered to prepare for war. We leave by dusk, she said. Their outpost won't hold through the night. The volcanic wind screamed across the ridge as the sun dipped behind the cliffs. The Ralkara moved like ghosts through ash, 50 strong, their armor glinting with heat-treated bone and hammered obsidian. Javelins, curved blades, shocknuts, all designed not just for blood, but for disruption. Grayson walked beside Emma now, not behind her. He wore a layered hybrid of diplomatic armor and tribal leather, reinforced with volcanic fiber, and plated shoulder guards etched with the Mateblood spiral. His heart pounded with a new rhythm, not fear, but purpose. The Ralkara had accepted him. The clans had united under Emma's fire. And now the enemy would see what that truly meant. From the top of the ridge, they saw it. Orano's outpost sprawled like a scar across the valley floor. Modular structures, sleek towers, a pulse drill at the center glowing faintly with blue plasma. Guard patrols moved in tight formations, armed with non-regulation rifles. No corporate banners flew. No transmissions were sent. It was a silent crime, hoping to stay hidden in the dark. But the dark no longer belonged to them. Emma crouched beside him, her gaze calculating. We strike threefold: North Cliff, South Trench, Center Core. Disable the turrets first. No casualties unless forced. Grayson nodded. They're running power through external conduits. We overload them, shut the whole compound down without firing a shot, and if they fire anyway, then we bury them. The command was given with a flick of Emma's claw. The warriors dispersed, no fanfare, no shouting. Just precision, purpose. Grayson moved with the southern team, leading them through the trench paths, his wrist pad displaying thermal overlays of guard rotations. Emma vanished into the cliffs, her silhouette briefly outlined in the molten glow before the wind swallowed it. The moment came like a match strike. The turrets shorted, outbursting in sparks. The eastern wall collapsed, silent charges rupturing. Support Stott and Emma dropped from the ridge like a shadow with teeth, landing atop a panicked sentry and disabling him with a single blow. The Ralkara stormed through the breach with terrifying speed, blades drawn, shields humming. Grayson ducked under plasma bursts, fired his stun rifle, and guided his squad toward the uplink relay. Alarms wailed. Lights flickered, but it was all ready. Too late. Emma kicked open the command center doors, dragging out the operator and Orano's field lieutenant still clutching a half-cent data pad. She slammed him into the ground, claws hovering just above his throat. You knew this land was sacred, she snarled. You came anyway. The man bled from his mouth. The board? Said the tribes were fractured. Said UWODN single quotes to ... unite. Grayson stepped beside her, voice cold. You were wrong. He activated his comm. Grayson to EmbassyNet. Evidence secured. Begin lockdown. Confirm orbital embargo. The reply came instantly. Confirmed. Orano's corporate privileges suspended. Global alert issued. Emma pulled back, rising without killing him. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we were merciful. This time. The man only nodded, coughing. Outpost was dismantled before dawn. Ralkara scouts dragged stolen mining cores into the ash. Tribesmen erected flame totems across the compound's perimeter, markers that no company dared to ignore. As the twin moons of Jark 7 rose, Emma stood beside Grayson at the edge of the broken compound. The wind whipped her hair back. Her eyes were clear, calm. You were right, she said. Legal fire can still burn. He smiled, exhausted. So can you. She looked at him sideways. We fought well together. Grayson turned to her fully. That wasn't fighting. What was it then? He exhaled. Bonding. She didn't reply. But she reached out, took his wrist gently scarred, bandaged, healing, and held it like something sacred. The war banners had not yet fallen, but the fires of battle had cooled. Smoke drifted lazily over the shattered remains of the Orano's outpost, curling skyward like a last dying breath. The Ralkara warriors moved with purpose, but not celebration. They gathered evidence, burned the remaining drills, marked the boundary stones with fresh ash and molten ink, a warning in blood and soot. We are not prey. Grayson stood on the high ridge overlooking the valley, his wrists still wrapped in ceremonial cloth. Not for healing now, but for symbolism. The Mateblood bond had carried him through war, through silence and steel. But it was no longer enough. Not for what came next. Behind him. Emma approached in full ceremonial garb, her red fur cleaned and braided. Obsidian-dyed leather hugging her frame, and tribal paint streaked across her brow like jagged fire. But something in her posture had shifted. Not just power. Not just command. Doubt. You're quiet, Grayson said, not turning around. My father has returned, Emma answered. Grayson turned. The one who hasn't spoken to you since the bite? He never stopped speaking, she said. Just stopped calling me his daughter. Her voice was level, but tension crept beneath each word. Her father, Elder Tyron, was a living legend. Among the southern ridges, a war priest who once drove off 5 mercenary units with nothing but ash-forged claws and a blade named Silence. He didn't talk about diplomacy. He talked about legacy. About Fire. And now he had returned to challenge her bond. What does he want? Grayson asked, though he already suspected. To test the Mateblood, she replied. Publicly, formally. If it fails, the clans will call this unity a lie. The accord collapses before it's even raised. Grayson exhaled. How do we prove something we never meant to begin? Emma looked him in the eye. We endure. Together. It's not a test of combat. It's a test of spirit. The arena was not the same fire circle they had sparred in weeks before. This was the cradle of flame where only the most sacred rites were held. Obsidian monoliths circled a pit of living magma, glowing red beneath a cracked platform suspended by heat-treated stone columns. It pulsed with old magic more spiritual than technological. The kind of place that remembered every word ever spoken inside it. Hundreds gathered, warriors, elders, children from 6 clans. They came not to fight, but to witness. Emma and Grayson stood at the center of the platform, facing Elder Tyron. He stood motionless, armored in nothing but the soot of his ancestors. His eyes burned brighter than the magma below. You claim bond, Tyron said, voice like thunder wrapped in gravel. But the bond was not chosen. It was forged by accident, by teeth, by mistake. He looked at Emma. Did you choose this? Human with your will? Emma's throat tightened. Not at first. Then the bond is flawed. Not if it became real, she said. Tyron turned to Grayson. And you, off-worlder? Do you stand because you believe or because you are? Afraid to fall? Grayson stepped forward. I stand because I chose to. After everything, after the fire, after the war, I choose her. Not because it's easy or safe or clean, but because it means something now. Tyron said nothing. Then he raised his hands. And the drums began. This was not combat. This was the trial of endurance. No weapons. No movement. No blinking. Only presence. Grayson and Emma sank to their knees at the center of the stone platform, back straight, eyes open. The fire below pulsed. With a slow, ancient rhythm, the heat grew unbearable. Sweat rolled down his back. His eyes stung. His vision blurred. Time passed. 1 hour, 2, maybe more. Stillness became pain. Pain became pressure. Pressure became fear. But he stayed. He didn't move, not when his legs screamed. Not when the heat made every breath taste like ash. Beside him. Emma trembled once, but only once. Her eyes remained fixed ahead. The firelight danced across her face, and she was no longer just a warrior. She was a beacon. Grayson felt it too. The bond wasn't about blood anymore. It wasn't even about the bite. It was about what they had built after the mistake. The loyalty, the fire. The choice. At last, Tyron stepped forward. He reached down and placed one clawed hand on each of their shoulders. The fire sees you, he said. He turned to the crowd. The bond holds. A thunderous cry erupted from the gathering. Warriors howled. Elders raised their staffs. Drums shattered the air. Grayson collapsed forward, gasping, limbs trembling. Emma caught him, just enough to steady him before she dropped beside him too. Were exhausted, but they were free. That night, the bonfire accord was signed. Emma stood before the War Council, her armor replaced with a soft mantle of flame feather cloth. Grayson stood at her side, his hand still wrapped, a faint glow now etched permanently into the old wound. A mark that hadn't been there before. A living scar, a trace of spiritual endurance. The war banner was raised twin spirals of flame, encircling a claw and a star. For the first time in 200 cycles, The clans marched under one symbol, not just for revenge, not just for territory, but for a future they could choose together. Later, as the fires burned low and the stars shimmered above, Emma and Grayson sat together by the edge of the cradle of flame, watching the lava reflect in the obsidian pools. "You didn't blink," she whispered. He smiled. "Neither did you." She looked at his wrist, then her own. "Now they see us." He leaned closer, voice low. "Do you?" Emma's eyes shimmered with something deeper than fire. "I always did." The fires of celebration had barely cooled when the scout came screaming into the valley. His fur was matted with soot and dried blood. His claws cracked, tattoos dimmed by exhaustion. The war drums halted mid-beat. Grayson and Emma turned as one from the ridge overlook, their silhouettes framed by the freshly raised war banner, its twin flame sigil still fluttering in the volcanic wind. The scout dropped to his knees at the base of the fire circle, panting, eyes wide with dread. "They're not finished," he gasped. "Orano's wasn't the end. They left survivors. I tracked one. He fled west during the breach. He had equipment. A pack, a dish, a relay." Emma's eyes darkened. "He's signaling a retrieval." Grayson's stomach dropped. "If he makes contact before the embargo takes full effect, they'll send reinforcements," Emma finished. He didn't need to say what they were. Both thinking, the accord would fracture before it ever took root. Everything they had suffered through the sparring match, the bond, the drones, the trial, the unification, would vanish in the smoke of another corporate betrayal. And this time, there would be no plausible deniability. Only fire and fallout. Emma turned to the scout. "Where?" "The southern ravines," he said, "near the shattered range." That was deep in abandoned mining territory, twisted stone, unstable tunnels, terrain so treacherous even Oranos hadn't tried to drill it. If the enemy had gone to ground there, he wasn't just hiding. He was gambling everything on a final signal burst. "We'll go now," Emma said, already moving. Grayson grabbed his gear, shoulder plate clicking into place over the Mateblood. "Sash. Not alone," he said. They left within the hour, a strike team of 5 warriors handpicked from the bonded clans. No banners, no ceremony. Just silence and smoke trailing their path. The ravine was a maze of ancient faults and magma cracked stone, the air thicker, older, somehow untouched even by the wind. Grayson's visor flickered, struggling to adapt. Emma didn't need it. She moved with the instinct of a predator in her ancestral hunting grounds, every scent, every ridge, every echo known to her bones. After hours of pursuit, the lead scout signaled. A claw lifted. A pause. Nest ahead. They crouched at the lip of a jagged shelf and saw it barely visible beneath. Thermal camouflage and the skeletal remains of a collapsed mining rig. A lone man, helmet off, shoulders hunched, his fingers danced over a data pad. A relay dish blinked slowly behind him, counting down. "Final transmission," Grayson whispered. Emma's claws flexed. "We disable the dish." No signal, no retrieval. She moved like smoke, looping left with 2 warriors flanking her. Grayson took the right, creeping low across the shale, each step measured, silent. Then the signal spiked. "Now!" Emma snarled. Grayson sprinted, slamming a disruptor clamp to the base of the dish. Sparks exploded. The relay shuddered and died. Emma leapt from above, slamming the lone survivor into the ground so hard the stone cracked. He didn't struggle. He just laughed. "You think this was it?" He wheezed. "You think we're the only ones?" Blood trailed from his mouth, but his smile was unbroken. This was a test run. A distraction. Emma's claws hovered at his throat. "Talk." The man spat. "You stopped a seed, not the tree. Oranos isn't even the real name. It's a mask. Behind them are 10 more. Shell cores. Backdoor funding from planetary syndicates. You think you've won something? He bared his teeth. You've declared war on a Hydra, and it remembers. Grayson felt the chill before the words even fully landed. The implications echoed like a blade sliding down a throat. They had stopped a front operation, not the invasion. And now the hive was stirred. Emma pulled back slightly, not from fear, but restraint. She glanced at Grayson, her voice low. Should end him. No, he said. We take him back. His words are just threats until we make them proof. She looked like she wanted to argue. But the idea in single quotes T. Instead, she struck once clean and brutal, knocking the man unconscious. When she turned back to Grayson, her face was still wild with fury, but behind her eyes was something else. Control. Growth. You're becoming frighteningly good at this, he said. She tilted her head. You taught me how to think like an off-worlder. Doesn't mean I've stopped wanting to fight like a Ralkara. They returned to the camp beneath a blood-orange sky. The captured saboteur bound in fireweave, the damaged relay dish slung over a beast's back. When the council saw them return alive, the drums started again, not for war, but for warning. Elder. Tyron met them at the fire circle. His eyes lingered on the unconscious man before settling on his daughter. Did you learn what you needed? Emma nodded. He wasn't just trying to escape. He was trying to ignite the second wave. Grayson stepped forward. We need to prepare. The accord must be sealed before they strike again. We need orbital eyes, full net encryption, alliance-wide. Mobilization. The matriarch stepped from the inner den. You will have it, she said. But the clans must see the bond is more than strategy, that it holds not just in blood, but in peace. Emma turned to Grayson. Tomorrow we return to the cradle. Not for trial, for vow. Grayson blinked. A second ceremony? Her voice softened. A chosen one. This time, we mark the bond because we want it, not because the flame decided. He stared at her and slowly nodded. That night, beneath the double moons, they stood alone in the lava-lit chamber where it had all begun. No audience. No challenge. No tests. Just two people who had burned through the worst together. Emma dipped her claws into the ironwood ink, drew the spiral across his palm, and whispered, You are no longer the outsider who stood in my fire. Grayson pressed his forehead to hers, and you're no longer the warrior who bit by mistake. Their hands clasped scar to scar, and in that firelit silence, the last remnant of doubt was consumed. The bond was no longer a mark of accident. It had become symbol of rebellion. Of unity. Of choice. The war banner rose higher than any before. Twin moons shone down on the battlefield like watchful gods, casting pale silver over the ash-choked ridges. Beneath them, the united clans stood ready, not just Ralkara, but warriors from across Jark 7's fractured territories. What had once been whispers of ancient rivalries now marched together under a single symbol, a flame entwined with a claw and a star. Grayson stood at the head of the coalition, armor lacquered in soot-black and blood-red. His shoulder bore the mark of Mateblood. His left wrist, where Emma had once bitten him during a spar, now shimmered with a faint glow, the bond reforged, chosen, made sacred by ritual and fire. Behind him, the diplomatic uplink confirmed what they already knew. Orano's reinforcements had arrived. They hadn't come in peace. No pretense. No mining surveys. The corporate fleet dropped combat walkers, orbital sensor blockers, and terrain-clearing drones directly into the southern basin. It was no longer extraction. It was conquest. Grayson lowered the receiver, jaw clenched. They've landed 3 full dropships. Full planetary lockdown was ignored. No insignias. Just machines and mercs. Emma stepped beside him, her obsidian-wrapped gauntlets glinting with tribal engraving. Her war paint had been reapplied in a spiral across her neck and chest symbols of guardianship, deathrite, and rebirth. "They're betting we won't strike first," she said. "They're betting we'll break before they do." She turned to him, voice low. "Then let's make them regret the gamble." The matriarch approached with Elder Tyron at her flank. Neither looked uncertain. "You are our chosen fire," the elder said to Emma, and he looked at Grayson, "is the ember that refused to go out." Emma raised her javelin, shouting a word in Ralkara tongue that echoed across the valley like a crack of thunder. The clans moved. The final battle began not with a scream, but with a pulse, a sonic disruption Grayson had planted days ago beneath. The mining basin triggered a cascading blackout across Orano's perimeter grid. Lights flickered. Turrets hiccuped. The clan warriors surged like fire through dry root. Emma led the high line, scaling the cliff's edge to intercept the plasma turrets before they could lock on. Her claws tore through steel as though the gods themselves had blessed her hands. Grayson moved with the strike team below, disabling command relays, jamming comms, cutting signal feeds with his diplomatic override codes rewritten into tribal script. Every encrypted line he severed was a chain broken from Orano's hold. The corporate forces retaliated hard. Drones strafed the canyon. Explosives laced the crags. One of the walker units collapsed half a ridge with a single blast, but the Ralkara kept coming. They moved like storm tide waves of red fur, ash-wrapped armor, and roaring war cries in 3 dialects. No longer fragmented, no longer isolated, the clans fought as one. Emma reached the central drill rig first, what remained of it. It had been modified into a transmission tower, likely meant to override planetary restrictions and re-establish long-range contact with orbit. Its pulse would have reopened the door to off-world corporations, reigniting colonial extraction across the moon. She climbed the scaffolding, dodging automated fire, and reached the core. Grayson met her there moments later, dragging the final uplink console offline and throwing the override beacon into the molten pit below. Transmission shut down. Permanently. From above, the last dropship attempted liftoff, but the jamming signal held. It staggered, drifted, and exploded in the sky like a false sunrise. Silence fell, then cheering, not just from Ralkara, but from all clans scattered through the basin, each one having survived their front. Driven back mercs held their ground. They had done it. Not with overwhelming force, but with unity, with coordination. With choice. 3 days later, Grayson stood at the edge of the valley as off-world diplomats descended in sleek, gleaming ships. Not Oranos. These were government observers from the neutral core worlds brought in to verify what Jark 7 had done. He didn't speak for the moon anymore. He stood with it. Emma walked beside him, now clad in robes of flame silk reserved for the highest fire guardians. Her Mateblood insignia had been stitched into the folds next to his, woven from materials not native to the moon. They matched now, not because of tradition, but because of what they had survived. "You could leave now," she said, not unkindly. "You've earned your legacy." He turned to her. "I already left once. It just took me a while to realize I wasn't going anywhere." She looked at him fully, then eyes glowing but soft. "You stayed." He smiled. "I burned." That night, the clans gathered one last time beneath the cratered stars. There was no battle drum, no speech. Just the slow, rhythmic hum of peace songs carried across fire pits and woven from memory. Emma and Grayson stood in the fire circle alone, facing one another as the elders began the final rite. It wasn't a marriage. It wasn't a vow. It was something older. The binding flame. She reached for him first, drawing a new line of volcanic dye across his chest. He did the same, across hers. Then, in silence, they pressed forehead scars to scars, and the fire between them flared white, then gold. then vanished into the night, not consumed, not lost. Joined. In the ashes of war. In the heat of unity, they had created something no treaty, no weapon, no ritual could undo. They had become Matebloods not by accident, but by enduring together. And when the stars above shimmered with the rising light of a new dawn, and the people of Jark 7 sang of what had been earned in fire, a single story rose above all. She bit him in a spar, and they built a future from it.